It is 6 o'clock and the meeting of the Kerrville City Council is now in session. And Delane Segerman, Council Member Place 4, will lead us in invocation and a pledge. If you'll please stand.
If you'll pray with me, please. Dear God, as we begin to have visitors and guests attend our meetings, keep us safe from COVID or other contagious illnesses. We've missed our citizens' direct input, and we welcome them back. Be with each and every council member, city staff, and attendee, and that our decisions would be for what's best for Kerrville. Continue to watch over our medical personnel around town and the frontline protectors of our safe environment here in Kerrville, as well as our police officers and firemen when on duty to keep them safe from harm. Thank you for this opportunity to meet. In your son's name we pray. I believe the flag will lower and we can say our pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag, the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just a couple of procedural matters. Thank you for attending, and note that it's good to be back to meetings where citizens can appear in person, and that we will continue in this format unless there's a change in the status of the pandemic or governor's orders that would warrant a different format. I just remembered, you can hear me better if I don't have that on. Citizen or public participation continues to be available by calling in via Zoom, emailing, or using the City Hall drop box before 4 p.m. And all of these instructions are provided online and in the agenda. If anyone present wants to speak on an agenda item, by now they would have been required to sign up when they came into the building. When speakers are called, they are to come to the podium in front of the stage and begin by stating their name and address for the record. Note that the public comment periods are for council to set aside time to specifically hear from you. Any questions that you might have will not be responded to until after public comments have been concluded. And this one, you know, refrain from abusive, inappropriate, rude language or conduct. And we just thank you for being here and having the interest that you show in being here. Now, we will have our announcements of community interest.
Early voting for the November 3rd, 2020 election begins Tuesday, October 13th, and runs through Friday, October 30th, at either the Hill Country Youth Event Center or the Ingram Independent School District building. City of Kerrville residents can vote at either location, and both locations will have drive-up curbside voting. That's all.
All right. Any other items of community interest from the council? Okay. If not, we have a Kerrville Kindness Award, and I would like the representative or representatives of KPUB to please come forward at this time. This is Mike Whitler, who is the CEO of KPUB. Or what? Are you hearing me? Okay. All right. We will we'll increase the volume a bit. Okay. City of Kerrville recognizes the Kerrville Public Utility Board with the September 22nd, 2020 Kerrville Kindness Award. The Kerrville Public Utility Board has performed above and beyond the call of duty during a number of recent inclement weather events, working around the clock to restore power to Kerrville homes after strong storms downed numerous power lines. In addition, KPUB recently sent linemen to assist communities in both Texas and Louisiana that suffered widespread power outages following Hurricane Laura. On the home front, the company responded to the COVID-19 crisis by establishing a new Change for Charity program that offers a solution to residential customers struggling to pay their electric bills. And KPUB employees also donated $5,000 to a local food relief fund. I'll say this, I didn't have anything to do with the decision to give this award, but I am on the KPUB board, and they do a great job, and safety and service just at the heart of what they do. You have a word for us?
Okay.
No. All right. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mike, very much. Okay. Got to get my glasses on for this next one. Dale Trees. Dale has been vitally involved in the Kerrville Recovery Coalition community, and they have served ably in helping us as a city to know how to be more responsive. And so I'm delighted to give this proclamation. But I also want to say one other thing. Last time we recognized some retiring board members. One of them is not here. He's now moved to Missouri, Steve Pautland, who was at the hospital and served so well in the coalition and really helped a lot of people through that. Whereas through Recovery Month, we work to promote and support evidence-based treatment and recovery practices, the emergence of a strong and proud recovery community and the dedication of service providers and clients across our community who make recovery in all its forms possible, and prevention of mental and substance use disorders works. Treatment is effective, and people can and do recover in our area and around the nation. Whereas we must encourage relatives and friends of people with mental and substance abuse disorders to implement preventive measures, recognize the signs of a problem, and guide those in need to appropriate treatment and recovery support services. And whereas the 2020 Recovery Month, which is named Join the Voices for Recovery, Celebrating Connections, embraces the challenges experienced in 2020. When we celebrate our connections to the diversity of people from all walks of life striving for recovery, we find support and courage to speak up for inclusion, respect, and opportunity. Your efforts can help reduce the stigma around the impact of mental health and substance use disorders and support individuals living in recovery. And whereas Kerrville Recovery Community Coalition invite all residents of Kerrville to participate in National Recovery Month. And now, therefore, I, Bill Blackburn, Mayor of the City of Kerrville, do hereby proclaim the month of September 2020 as Recovery Month in Kerrville, Texas, and call upon the people of Kerrville to observe this month with appropriate programs, activities, and ceremonies to support recovery. You have a word for us? That's all right. Yeah.
Good evening. My name is Dale Trees. I am a person of long-term recovery and the chairman for 4 years now of the coalition, and it's a great honor that I get to participate. I'd also like to express gratitude toward our community, the members of, as well as Mayor, our city council, and all of those of you who have supported our recovery efforts here in Kerrville. We will continue, and with the COVID that we've experienced this year, we've also experienced isolation in many cases, and that is very detrimental to persons in recovery. So that's where our theme this year, which is a national theme, for connections. Connection is very important. And behind the scenes, we still stayed rather connected to persons in recovery, and whenever a couple of the homes had restrictions, we provided some food as well. The recovery community joined together, and we keep pushing forward. So again, we really appreciate, on behalf of myself and the board, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dale. Yeah, that's right.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. We come now to the consent agenda. No, I'm sorry. The Visitors Citizens Forum. If you would like to address the council and have filled out a speaker form, and you're limited to 4 minutes. Everybody?
No one has signed up, sir.
Okay. All right. Now, the consent agenda, which we vote on together, all of these items, unless there is a council member who wants to pull an item or a citizen.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we accept for A, B, and C, but I would also like to just say about 4C, I think it's worth mentioning, that was for the Legion lift station, and that's putting $800,000 back into the account for that, and I think that's worth mentioning. So a very, very important project, and the fact that we saved money on it is wonderful.
Do you want to include 4D?
Yes, let's do 4D.
Okay.
So I would move that we accept for A, B, C, and D.
All right. Okay, any discussion? All right, all in favor of that motion, raise your hand. Okay, and it's unanimous. Now we go to a public hearing, and there's several parts to this, but if you will read that in, then I'll gavel at 5 a.m.
Ordinance number 2020-18, an ordinance amending Chapter 60 of the Code of Ordinances, City of Kerrville, Texas, such chapter more commonly known as the City Zoning Code, by amending the zoning code to include adding new definitions, amending regulations regarding front yard setbacks, clarifying uses within residential transition zoning districts, RT, and the airport zoning district, revising the formula for determining parking spaces for multi-tenant buildings, clarifying administrative processes, deleting requirements for specific building materials, and other amendments as provided.
All right, Mr. Paxton from our staff will share with us now.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and Council. If you recall, June 26, 2018, we were here for the final reading and the adoption of the Kerrville 2050 plan. From that, looking at some of the action items out of that plan, we looked at rewriting the zoning code, and that was adopted in August of 2019, effective October 1st. Council then asked staff to continue reviewing the new zoning code as we apply that to new projects that were coming in over the course of the next 6 to 12 months. And here we are looking at some additions and some amendments to the zoning code, the sign code, and the thoroughfare plan. For the zoning code, we do have a couple of typographical corrections, zoning map corrections, definitions to review, development regulations, administrative processes, building materials as related to one of the previous House bills, 2439, the airport district, some parking requirements, and City of Kerrville development standards. And the purpose section for the C2 light commercial zoning district, the C2 district accommodates a wider variety of retail, office, and service uses than properties zoned in C1, not C2. So a minor change there. 322 and 324 May Drive on the zoning map were zoned public and institutional. That's two residential lots that have single-family dwellings on them. So those should be zoned R2, consistent with the rest of that neighborhood. One of the goals with the rezoning map was to identify more of the public uses throughout town with the public and institutional zoning district. We rezoned many of the parks into the PI zoning district, and here's a short list of the parks that were not rezoned to PI. I'd like to update that as well. So Habitat Park, BC Richards Park, Memorial Park, Westland Park, and Schultz Park. As you can see, some of those are zoned mixed use, R1, R1A, or R2, recommending all of those be zoned PI for the public and institutional zoning district. One of the items that we've found some confusion with both our customers and staff is we have three different uses in the zoning code for bed and breakfast, hotel, motel, and short-term rental uses. These three different land uses are more or less used as two different common names, bed and breakfast being for the household type Airbnb, VRBO, and those type of short-term rental units. So we're amending the bed and breakfast inn definition to include that it is located in a non-residential district, up to 20 rooms used for lodging. The hotel motel definition is not changing. And the short-term rental unit, which is what most of us think of as the Airbnb or VRBO use, would be located in a residential zoning district. The customers or the users of those, of course, can call them by bed and breakfast or Airbnb, but the zoning terminology is short-term rental unit. So clarifying those two definitions to help provide some clarity for our customers. Additionally, bed and breakfast was not included in the land use table. So you see that here shown in C1, C2, C3, downtown arts and culture, and the mixed use zoning districts as permitted uses. Again, the bed and breakfast definition is for a commercial venture, not a residential component. That's the short-term rental unit that you see at the bottom, which are conditional or permitted in the residential zoning districts. The church accessory uses, the original definition restricted the accessory uses within a church, whether that be the parsonage, classrooms, or additional social centers, would be restricted to the lot that house the main sanctuary. As you know, several of the churches in town, as they've grown over time, have picked up adjacent lots or across the street. We're amending that definition to include contiguous lots or adjacent lots within the same block, so that those churches would be, the existing ones would be legal to this new definition, and the additional churches could continue to grow in that same manner, but still restricted to that immediate campus area. Here's the definition of block versus block face for reference. So when we say within the same block, that does include across a street, or contiguous would be behind that block, but that would be kind of the restrictions of how far they could branch out with those accessory uses. The definition of height in the zoning code as drafted was not consistent with the definition of height in the building code. So rather than change the international building codes, recommended changing the zoning code to match. The original definition had the height measured at the highest peak of the roof, and the building code actually averages the highest peak and the lowest eave of a roof. And so we're just amending that to match the building code. And here's that graphic there. On the right-hand side, you see the original definition, the building height at the peak. On the left-hand side, you can see the blue line indicating the average. So for pitched roof design, obviously that's going to be a few extra feet. For your flat roof designs, it's going to be pretty nominal changes there. Under our development regulations, accessory uses in the front yard for residential properties are subject to a 30-inch maximum height. We are recommending an exemption from that for any carports. So the list of sections that would be amended to the RE, R1, R1A, R2, RM, and RT zoning district are listed here. The new section will read, no structure in excess of 30 inches may exist between the front wall of any building and the front property line, except an ornamental fence up to 6 feet, and carports not exceeding the height of the primary structure are permitted. In mixed-use zoning, there is a reference to additional setbacks for any commercial development in the mixed-use zoning district if it's adjacent to a single-family home in the mixed-use zoning district. However, mixed-use zoning does not allow for single-family development. So we're recommending removing that reference in each of these districts, R3, RM, C1, C2, C3, IM, mixed use, PI, and AD. The RT zoning district includes 3 different types of housing: single-family detached with an accessory dwelling unit, and a duplex. However, the development regulations for those lots, we only included the regulations for single-family dwelling. We're missing those other 2 sections of development regulations. So we're recommending you add those back in, similar to R1A and R2. R2, we missed the accessory dwelling unit regulations. It is a permitted use, but did not have the specific regulations in place. One of our administrative processes within the code, there is a statement for a mandatory preliminary conference that should be met rather than shall. As we've gone through our development this last year, many of our professional developers, that preliminary conference may be not much more than a phone call. So we're actually going to recommend that just be a recommendation and remove the word mandatory. So the preliminary conference is a recommendation for an applicant, but it's not a requirement. An appeal of a zone case. So this would be a zone case that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommends denial. The applicant is required to take action to bring it forward to City Council as an appeal. The original code had a 10-day deadline for that appeal to be filed. Planning and Zoning Commission meets on a Thursday, which places that 10 days on a Sunday. So it really gives them a 8-day deadline. We're recommending we move that out to 14 days to give them a full 2 weeks to submit that appeal. And then the appeal will be placed on the City Council agenda within 30 days if possible, and the applicant can only request an extension of no more than 60 days beyond the appeal date, or the Planning Commission denial date. House Bill 2439 from the last legislative session limited cities' abilities to both require or prohibit certain building materials that are not specific to the building code. And we have 2 different zoning districts that actually had building material requirements. The R3 zoning district, which is your multifamily district, required that any accessory building be designed to appear as a residence with wood, rock, or brick exterior, specified the roof design and the front door and window locations. And we're recommending to simplify that to the building containing accessory uses shall be designed to appear as a residence, so that it simplifies that design and then it can be consistent with the rest of the complex. The RT zoning district, we had similar language based on the building materials and just wanted to simplify that the building shall be designed to appear as a residence, so that non-residential building still fits within the RT zoning district. The airport district, we met with the airport director and a few of the board members to go through some of the land use, some of the definitions, and really took a deep dive in the airport district to see how that would impact their operations, their tenants, and the adjacent property surrounding the airport. So we're adding several definitions related to aviation service and repair, the aircraft maintenance, land use and definition, aircraft sales, aviation facilities. And then through the land use table, we picked up several other land uses that would be comparable to the airport, whether it's on property or outside of that. Picking up gift shop, hotel, vocational training centers consistent with KISD's CTE program for aviation for the high school. There are several references to the City of Kerrville development standards. That would be a separate appendix to the zoning code. Originally intended to pick up some of the auxiliary ordinances that the Code Review Committee was looking at. One of the things that was left out of that was the parking requirements, specifically the parking standards for spaces and drive aisles, the angles of parking, and how those parking lots are designed. So we would like to amend the definition to reference that Appendix B and adding specifically the parking layout and construction standards, adding dimensions for the parking spaces consistent with the old code, 9 by 19 parking spaces. The dimensions of the drive aisles would be dependent upon the angle of the parking. There's an exhibit there. With that, I'd be pleased to answer any questions before or after the public hearing about the zoning code.
Yeah, council, any questions?
I don't have any questions. I'm just glad that you did I was glad to see the B&B and the short term separated out. I think that's been very confusing. And I was also glad to see you put in some the airport items that you had there. It just helps to polish our diamond in the rough out there. So thank you.
All right, okay. What is happening here is once the zoning ordinance is out there and so forth, you're solving problems or inconsistencies, basically?
That's correct. Through the projects that we've worked on the last year, these are a few items that we found either inconsistencies or that needed some refinement.
All right. I do have a question. When I was pastor at Trinity Baptist Church here, we started purchasing the lots and houses across Bluebell from us, and they've continued that. So now, what will change for them?
The way it's worded now, nothing will change. So those lots are within the same block, or they're contiguous to the back side of the church.
Yeah.
So that would be consistent with the new definition.
Okay. Thank you. All right. We're now in a public hearing. Do we have anyone who would like to speak to this issue?
Ms. Franchina, are there any callers on Zoom?
Okay.
No, there are no speakers for this public hearing.
No, she said no speakers.
I'm sorry?
She said no speakers.
Okay, she's not going to. Okay. All right. In that case, we have a motion in regard to this matter.
Could I just make a comment real quick? I wanted to say the amendments and the revisions and the catching of the minor corrections all the way down to some height issues and things. It's encouraging to me to know we are continuing to review all of these codes, and as things come up, we are taking action and making sure that it fits the needs of our builders and our buyers and our developers. So thank you, Drew, for your work on this. It's very encouraging, like I said, to know that it doesn't have to be a concrete plan from the beginning, because it's constantly evolving. So thank you for your work on that.
All right, and thanks to the Citizens Committee, put the zoning ordinance together and reduced zones from, I believe, 49 to 19. That makes a big difference. Okay,
Mr. Mayor, I will move that we approve ordinance 2020-18 on the first reading.
All right. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, got a second. All in favor, let it be known by the raised hand. Okay. And, hold on just a minute. We are out of that part of the public hearing at 6:31. And at 6:31, we go into the next.
Ordinance number 2020-19, an ordinance adopting amendments to the City of Kerrville, Texas sign code as found within Chapter 92 of the city's Code of Ordinances. Said amendments to establish specific regulations for signs located within a residential transition zoning district, RT. And we do have one citizen speaker signed up for this public hearing, pre-registered.
Okay, all right. And I withdraw my gavel. I was early on that, so we'll. Okay, Mr. Paxton.
Thank you, Mayor. We're looking at update to the sign code specific to the residential transitional zoning district, which acts as a buffer district between, specifically around downtown and Junction Highway and into the neighborhoods behind those. The current sign code allows for monument signs only unless a property is on one of the major arterials. So much of the RT zoning district does not front any of those arterials, so they're only allowed a monument sign. Here's an example from the code of monument sign versus a freestanding sign. A freestanding sign would be anything on single or double poles or columns versus on an actual rock or brick monument. Summary of the signs that we've observed through the RT zoning district have a maximum of 8 foot. The average height for those signs is actually 7 foot 8 inches. The majority of them are freestanding signs by definition. There are 3 true monument signs within those 2 major non-residential areas of the RT district. Most signs are not lit. With one that actually had uplighting. There is one electronic message board, which I was informed today has actually been at least temporarily covered up, is not acting as an electronic message board. This new section would be added on to the section for the Downtown Arts and Culture District, which is specific to the signage in that district for downtown and the downtown core. The signs may be freestanding or monument signs, limited to 8 feet in total height from the natural grade to the top of the structure. Freestanding or monument signs be limited to 32 square feet and shall be a minimum setback from 5 feet from the front or corner side property line to make sure there's no visibility obstructions. Electronic displays shall comply with the hour restrictions as if they were next to residential property. So that would be shut off at 8 p.m. and don't come on again until 6 a.m. Non-residential lots would be limited to 1 freestanding or monument sign. Freestanding or monument signs shall not be located within 25 feet of one another. That way neighboring signs can't start to conflict and block visibility of one another. Signs may not be internally illuminated, and external illumination shall not produce glare on adjacent roadways or adjacent properties. And with that, I'd be pleased to answer any questions before or after the public hearing.
Okay.
Just to clarify, Drew, on the RT, you said that most RT properties are not along a major arterial,
That's correct.
but are there some? Because I was thinking there weren't.
Don't believe so.
I mean, most of those.
There may be a small portion that
Most of those are
fronts.
going to be commercial, right?
Right.
When they're along the major arterials.
There may be a small portion off
Okay.
of Washington Barnett area that along Main Street. I don't have that on my map here, so I'm not positive.
Okay.
Yeah, because there was a sign that just became digital. I think it's Stop Pharmacy, the one-stop pharmacy.
In that
I guess
area,
is that
that
our-
is not zoned RT.
Okay. I didn't think so. When I'm looking at the zoning map, it's hard to tell what's dark brown, light brown, medium brown. So I need a full-size poster. I'm working on that.
Okay.
And on the 32 square feet, Drew, to clarify that, that is one side, or it's not both sides for 32 square feet.
That
It's
is
one
correct.
side.
When the sides of the sign are back to back, we measure one side only.
One side only.
Any other questions from council? All right, if not, now we go into the public hearing at 6:36. Okay, and we have one speaker signed up.
Yes, sir. Bruce Strachey.
Bruce Strachey, 615 Earl Garrett. And I apologize. I missed this in August at the P&Z, and I noticed it last night as I was looking at the agenda, and it really startled me. And with a little more research and some time, it's not quite as bad as I thought it was, but I still have some concerns I wanted to mention this evening. The first thing is 32 square feet. In some cases, for example, the church that's in the RT zone, a large sign, and their sign is not 32 square feet, I understand, but a large sign may be appropriate because of the architectural mass of that structure, and that makes sense. But in most of the RT zones, we have businesses, when it's a business, when it's a non-residential use, it looks like a house, and the additional parking by code is behind, and so it looks like a neighborhood, and that's part of the magic. That's why these neighborhoods are so successful and work so well with the mix of residential and commercial uses. And so 32 square feet is actually a significant, that's the size of a piece of plywood, right? As a solid marker in somebody's front yard. And so I think a smaller size, my suggestion was 16 square feet. I talked with somebody else today that suggested 24. I know it's an arbitrary pick, but if you really think about it and drive through our RT zones, there aren't any signs that are 32 square feet, not even at the church. Most of the signs are more like 10 to 12 square feet in size. My biggest concern is the electronic displays. And Drew pointed out there's one, and that's at the church, right? Yeah. And that fronts on North Street, where the sign is. And so my first question is, what is a major thoroughfare? The sign ordinance uses the phrase thoroughfare, but our master thoroughfare plan uses collector, arterial, secondary arterial. So what is a major thoroughfare in how we're doing that and deciding, is North Street a major thoroughfare since it's an arterial, and so I'm just saying I'm confused about that. In most of our RT zones, if it has to be on a major thoroughfare and that doesn't include a collector, then it would include West Water Street as an arterial, but it wouldn't include Earl Garrett, and it wouldn't include West Main and Barnett and stuff. I guess what I'm getting at is I'm very concerned if we're getting into some of the neighborhoods where this is already working and it can expand, and people are talking about expanding its use on, Earl Garrett or Garden Street, and I actually even think West Water Street. The electronic display is not appropriate in that kind of a district. If we have a commercial entity that's in one of those areas and they need an electronic sign, and they're on the fringe near the commercial where it makes sense, then we should probably change the zoning rather than allowing the signs to bleed into that residential transitional zoning. And I guess the biggest thing to me is it wasn't as clear as I'd like it to be. I understand when you read both sections, it really suggests that you can't ever have an electronic sign on Earl Garrett, and I think Westwater, and in many of those places, but it is confusing, and maybe if we could line the words up to match the thoroughfare plan and in the code, it would make it easier for people to understand. But my biggest concern is the electronic signs. Thank you all very much. Appreciate all your service. Thanks.
Okay, further discussion. All right, do I hear a motion?
Oh, I was looking for are there no more speakers?
Ms. Franchina, are there any speakers on Zoom?
Okay.
Oh, we have no speakers.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Bruce, and I had a chance to talk to Bruce today. And I actually went out and drove some of that area just with my husband and my son and a tape measure. And what we found in the larger signs, excluding the church, we found this approximately 17 foot. We found an approximately 20 foot and nothing larger than that. Now, this isn't comprehensive or scientific, but in thinking through the 32 feet, I'm not opposed to the idea of reducing that, but I don't want to do it arbitrarily and pick an arbitrary number. And the same with the electronic signs. I agree with what you said, Bruce, as far as the aesthetic of the neighborhood, not wanting that to bleed into what RT is intended to be, and the confusion over where in the RT that may be appropriate and not appropriate in arterial roadways and things like that. So for me, I plan to approve it on first reading, but I would like to have some more information to where we might be able to amend both the size, if appropriate, and the electronic messaging in a way that's consistent with what we're looking to achieve on the second reading.
I agree, because I went out today and drove as well, and I didn't find any that were that size. And so in keeping with the neighborhood look as it is, I think it bears reviewing maybe at least, so that we don't have some massive changes all of a sudden to a neighborhood that already looks a certain way. Just my 2 cents as well.
Well, and I didn't have a chance to drive it, and I would like to have some more time to check things out. I would like to put it off.
Excuse me.
Go ahead.
Just a couple of questions. Where did the 32 feet come from?
That's
The 32 square feet is consistent with the rest of the sign code. For your commercial developments on the smallest lot size, they would be allowed 32 square feet.
Okay, so
Comes from commercial.
it's transfers over from the commercial
Right.
sign.
That's correct.
ordinance. Okay, and then basically the same thing with the electronic sign, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Yeah, I have to agree with the council. I'm not wild about the electronic signs, particularly in those areas. I think it's a matter of, what you want that neighborhood to look like, and I'm just not a great big fan of that. So I'm not sure how we would proceed at this point, Mayor, but whether we table that item and come back to it again, or if we need to vote it down, or...
Well, we'll have 2 readings, right? So your next meeting is going to be back on, and whatever you decide finally at that meeting is what will happen. So you could either go either way in terms of approving it or not approving it, or approving it with amendments tonight, but it'll still come back for second reading.
Okay.
It sounds like, let me see if this is right. It sounds like we want to approve it, but withholding that issue of the 32-foot sign.
Well, it's either that, or do we need more information or time, or do we just want to go ahead and modify it to no electronic and a 24 square foot max?
I personally would like more time.
I would too, because I think if 20 feet's the largest you found, so what's the number that we officially?
Right.
So I think we need a little more time to
Right.
decide that, rather than just do that tonight and maybe still miss the objective. That's just my opinion. I guess we would get with Drew.
So can we just table it, or do we need to turn it down tonight and then it'll come back?
If you table it, then you'll have to go through first reading all over again.
Okay.
So, and that's why we have 2 separate readings, so that y'all have plenty of time to consider it. So you could just approve it with the understanding that you are going to take a closer look at those issues.
And we could revise it.
So we would approve it as presented,
First reading.
first reading, and then we can modify it in second reading.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
You want to make the motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve ordinance number 2020-19 on first reading.
Okay, all
I'll
right.
second.
We got a second? Further discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. And again, I think I missed the gavel out of public hearing, but I'm sure Ms. McElhannon will have recorded that. Okay. Now, would you read in 5C for us?
Ordinance number 2020-20, an ordinance amending the comprehensive plan for the city of Kerrville, Texas, Kerrville 2050, pursuant to Chapter 213 of the Texas Local Government Code by amending the thoroughfare plan contained therein to realign future connections from Olympic Drive and deleting a proposed future connection from Bearskin Trail to Ranchero Road.
All right. Mr. Paxton.
Thank you, Mayor. So we have two amendments to the thoroughfare plan. The first one is near the middle school for KISD, connecting Olympic Drive to the loop on the north side of the campus. The current map actually has that future connection, which is not an exact alignment. It is just indicating that there is a need for a connection there. But that current line does go right through the campus. So as you can see, we have that amended to go around, to go around the existing campus. The other one that we've had a look at is at adjacent to the Horizon neighborhood and Bear Paw Ranch and Kerrville South 2, a connection from Ranchero Road to Bearskin Trail. That connection is through an existing neighborhood, fully developed. One neighborhood is actually a high fence neighborhood with some ag exemptions for livestock. And so potential for that connection to ever occur based on the existing development, the existing lot build out, and the topography would be very difficult to say the least. This is also about a mile and a half outside of the city limits. So within our scope, it is, of course, on the thoroughfare plan. It is near the potential future ETJ, but it is, again, fully built out in that area, so it'd be difficult to make this connection. So we're recommending removing that from the thoroughfare plan.
Can you go back to the one before, Drew?
Go with me again, the Bear Paw, that area, what's the rationale?
The opportunity to build that road would be very difficult, given the existing development. For someone, if a developer came in and bought out the entire neighborhood to redevelop it, then there would be some opportunity. But with those being existing large lot developments, again, one of those neighborhoods is a high fence development. It would be extremely difficult for that road to ever be constructed. It goes through several homeowners' properties, and the topography between those two connections is difficult. I suspect that's why it wasn't built in the first place.
So basically, we're cleaning up, getting the thoroughfare plan to be correct.
That's correct.
As opposed to what it possibly could have been 40 years ago.
Right. This connection in particular, looking at it on paper, you can see there is a need to connect those two areas. Given the topography, it would be very difficult.
On the one before, Drew, the Olympic Drive, can you show me exactly where it looks different in the pulled-out version, or is this just is this proposed on the left?
Yes.
Okay, because we're actually extending it to Veterans Highway, right?
It's already done.
It was connected to Veterans Highway already. It's actually moving that curve around the back of the middle school.
It's hard to see.
Further
Okay.
northwest.
It's hard to see because it's just a minor
Okay.
shift.
So,
Yes, okay, that's why I didn't,
so once again, you're just correcting the map.
yeah, I just
That's
didn't see
correct.
where the change was made on that.
We're not adding or removing
I see.
a
It's a
future
very small
connection,
change.
just realigning that.
Okay, I see it now. Thank you.
Okay. All right, questions from council? All right, At 6:51, we go into the public hearing. Do you have anyone to speak to this?
There are no speakers in Zoom.
No speakers. No,
Yeah,
not
okay.
on the telephone.
All right. Council,
I move that we approve ordinance 2020-20 on the first reading.
A second.
all right. Get a motion second? All in favor, let it be known by the raised hand. It's unanimous. Okay. Now, we're out of that at 6:52. Okay, would you read in 6A for us, Ms. McLennan?
Resolution number 19-2020, a resolution approving the Neighborhood Enhancement Team Program, NET, for the city of Kerrville, Texas, and a presentation of NET accomplishments within Dole community and action to authorize the use of public funds to make minor improvements on private property and removal of unsafe structures. And we do have 2 citizen speakers signed up.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We're here today to present to you the initial results of the NET program's impact on the Dole community. And this will be a 2-part presentation. I'll do a quick introduction, and then I'm going to turn it over to Donna because of the fact that she's been instrumental in making this program succeed, and she can give you the exact details of the program itself. But to start first, we'd like to talk about why. Why is the NET program here? Well, the NET program is designed to have a positive impact on the community by assisting those that do not have the means to cut their yard, remove trash and rubbish, tree trimming, and minor repairs and such. And as you can see here is a copy of the purpose of the NET program itself. Kerrville 2050 also outlines and establishes numerous action items that help us to develop the policy for the NET program. These action items listed before you outline the scope of the NET program. The Dole Community Plan is another plan that is the result of the Kerrville 2050 plan, and the Dole Community Plan clearly communicates and directs code enforcement to use the NET program to help improve the neighborhoods as indicated in NC3 and NC4. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Donna so she can talk to you a little bit about the process itself and some of the ongoings.
Good evening. To maximize our effort, it is important to have a process. We have a 4-step process. The first step, conduct a neighborhood assessment. This consists of a 2-part process. The first is to work with selective departments to drive the neighborhood, to pick out potential opportunities. The second is to engage the community leaders to be able to understand their needs, walk the neighborhood, and identify potential opportunities. The second step, conduct improvements in the different areas of the community. Some examples may be mowing, minor painting, tree trimming, and other items that I'll highlight a bit further in the presentation. This can be conducted by city staff and volunteers. Step 3, with COVID, we were unable to hold a celebration as planned. However, in a normal year, the idea is to culminate all of the improvements with a 1-day celebration to recognize the neighborhood, volunteers, staff, and others. It is important to remember this is a team effort, and for us to make lasting memories, we must celebrate our success. Step 4, the community is empowered to sustain the gains. Code enforcement will continue enforcing activities through reactive and proactive means. These are the departments that participated in the initial discussion and provided support for the project. I would like to recognize the street department, Joel and Brandon, for their assistance in helping to address many of the issues in the neighborhood. I would also like to thank the other departments that contributed to our efforts. When we were ready to contact the community leaders, we set several meetings to discuss our purpose. We then re-met with the community leaders and volunteers and walked the Doyle community. We were able to visit with the homeowners, gather information on the needs of their property, and left applications for them to fill out. The end results, we ended up with 21 applications with 58 probable projects. The applications consist of tree trimming, painting, removal of trash and rubbish, junked vehicles, and unsafe structures. Some of the improvements were we removed the chain link fence on city property and installed a new wooden fence to reduce the view into the city yard. By moving the fence back, we now have a great place to plant some trees and wildflowers. We replaced the street signs to match the character of the Doyle community. We cleared an alleyway of overgrown trees and brush. K-Pub trimmed back some trees to reduce the potential down lines. We replaced the stairs at this home to make it safer for the owner to enter and exit her home. And I have to tell you, this home, the stairs were braced by lattice. That was the only thing that was keeping those stairs stable. We removed trash and rubbish from the home. We removed tree limbs from this property. Also removed more trees, or tree limbs, I should say. There are additional improvements we would still like to complete. These improvements will require public funds and staff to complete as they will be on private property. These are the 2 unsafe structures that we've identified, and the owners have communicated that they volunteer the demolition of the structures by city staff. Pending improvements, I would still like to remove some trash and rubbish, additional tree trimming, and minor painting. The potential cost of what is left in the Doyle community is $7,218. This will help to demolish the 2 unsafe structures and the other activities. We are asking that council approve the use of public funds, resources, and the equipment to complete the final activities in the Doyle community and to continue authorization to extend the NET program to other communities within the city of Kerrville. Are there any questions?
I have one question, Donna.
Sure.
This is obviously great work. I just want to reinforce what you said, the demolition. That is nothing that's being imposed. It's
strictly volunteer, yes. They're actually excited about it.
Yes, please take care of this for us.
Yes.
Okay, because I don't want there to be a perception that we're coming in and...
No, not at all, not at all.
Generally, how do you feel like you've been received in the neighborhood?
Oh, very welcoming.
Okay, good. Well, I personally think what's happening is great. And I think it's super. And then moving on to another neighborhood.
Correct.
And it's really just helping to build that neighborhood and the strength of that neighborhood. I think it's great.
I agree. I agree with you.
Good. Any other comments or?
No, I'm glad to see what you're doing, and I think the city needs to be commended for, because this is all being done right now by city employees, right?
Correct. And we had 1 volunteer.
Okay.
Okay, all right. Thank you. We have speakers signed up?
Yes, sir. Clifton Pfeiffer.
Okay. I thought I saw a coach come in.
Good evening. A man went out job hunting, couldn't find one, didn't have very much education, didn't have very much time, didn't have very much skills, but he found the job. The job was from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. No weekends. It was a great job for him. He went home all excited, told his wife, I found a great job, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., no weekends. He said, I applied for it and I got it. It's a great job for me. The wife said, I think it's great too. She pulled up the original ad, tore it up and said, you start Monday. That's the way it is in our community. You know, we have people in the community who want, but they don't necessarily have the needs. They want to get out there and they want to do. Since the revitalization, I want to thank the City Council and the City of Kerrville for what you've done so far in the dog community. It's been a big help tremendously because you've seen people take pride in what they have. But taking pride is not often enough. It takes money and it takes manpower. And you're looking at a whole lot of folk who are disabled and unable economically to get those things done. And I think that what they spoke on carries a great weight. You have no idea the trust factor that has been built through your efforts in the city, in the dog community. It's like a brand new community. You've made us a part of something that we wanted to be a part of for a very long time. And I think this will go even farther in doing that. Again, I want to thank you for what you've done, what you're going to do, and just making that community a part of the Kerrville as a whole. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Thank
Thank
you
you,
very much.
Clifton. Glad to do it.
Karen
Right.
Maddox.
I'm sorry?
Karen Maddox.
Oh, Karen, yes.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I am just so grateful and thankful to you for the improvements that I've noticed in the neighborhood through the net enhancement program. I think the biggest improvements were the street signs. I mean, that's just really exciting. And then also across from Doyle, where the former spot where the Martin Pool was, that is so beautiful now. And as Clifton stated, the residents of the community are really excited and proud and just thrilled that their needs and wants have been met by the city. So we really appreciate it. We want to thank you so much for what you have done and hope that this $7,000 will be approved to continue needed improvements. Thank you.
Karen, would you tell everybody who you are and your address?
Oh, I'm sorry. I am Karen Maddox, and I grew up in the Doyle community at 300 Miller, but I now live at 133 Terrace Lane.
And you're also involved with the
And
Doyle.
I am a employee at Hope for Health, which is housed at the Doyle Center.
Good. All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
Yeah, Clifton and Karen are both working with that Hope for Health program to increase the access to health care of low-income people, and it is a bang-up good program. All right. Do you have a motion? Second?
The only thing I think that maybe we should explain a little bit, because we are using city money and it's being used on private individuals' property, that maybe somebody can explain to us exactly so that people understand why we can do that.
I can take that question.
Okay.
So you'll recall that when we started this fiscal year, which will end at end of this month, When we put the budget together, we talked a lot about the neighborhood enhancement team and how that would work. So we budgeted close to $50,000 in two different funds. Part of that was repurposing some demolition funds that we never used toward this program. And the idea was that we would do 2 neighborhoods a year. Of course, COVID had other plans, and it's been a little bit of a struggle. But Donna and the staff have done a terrific job, despite COVID, of moving on a lot of fronts. We also, you'll recall, did the area development plan, the Doyle Community Area Development Plan. That's a 20-year plan. And so we're still pursuing that, but there is some overlap between the NET program and the area development plan. You'll see some of the action steps in both. But what we plan to do is move on to the next neighborhood as soon as possible, whether that's next spring or that's our plan anyway, or later. And it's probably going to be the area right adjacent to this area that we are finishing up on now. But this is a common practice where cities will use public funds to address neighborhood needs, to be a catalyst for sustained improvements that would be sustained by the private residents in the neighborhood, and whether that's a business or it's a residence. But you'll see this in many cities where they're trying to help the neighborhood with some longstanding issues, or as has been mentioned, you've got elderly people that just cannot do these things. And the idea is also that you use volunteers from the neighborhood and civic groups and donated paint. And so Donna is working on all those fronts to get that done. It's not just public funds. There's a lot of sweat equity and donations as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the idea behind the program.
Good, thank you.
All right. Any other questions?
I was curious, Mark, do you remember when we had our first meeting over there with the community? It seems like a year ago, was it? Approximately when we got to talk with the community and ask the community itself, how can we help? What are some of your needs? And they were very quick to point out a few. And I think immediately we started working on the property across the street from the Doyle building. Mm-hmm. So we didn't wait till just the format came down to start with some things. And I think we saw the community start to trust us, that we really were sincere about wanting to help. So I'm really proud of our city staff, because without them, they put together those meetings and collected all the data and the information so that we wouldn't miss anything. So thank you very much. And here we are today. Just before you know it, things can happen. So thanks for trusting us, Clifton.
All right. What is your pleasure on this one?
I would like to move that we approve resolution number 19-2020.
All right.
I'll second.
Okay, we got a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, let it be known by the raised hand. Okay. And now, if you will read in 6B for us, Ms. McLennan.
Update on status of long-range water supply plan, implementation, and professional services agreement with Hewitt Engineers, Inc. for the completion of a groundwater well in the Ellenberger Aquifer.
All right. Mr. Hoppy, Deputy City Manager, would you introduce this for us?
Sure. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I wanted to provide you both an update to the city's long-range water supply plan, as well as a recent very successful effort in a partnership agreement with the Headwaters Groundwater Conservation District, and then also just tell you about next steps going forward in regards to the professional services agreement, which is on your agenda tonight. We do have a brief PowerPoint presentation for you. As I stated, as you may recall, in March of this year, you all entered into a partnership agreement with Headwaters to look at exploratory groundwater within the Ellenberger Aquifer. This was one of the key elements that was identified within the long-range water supply plan, which you all adopted in 2019. And essentially the way the agreement was crafted was that the city provided land located on the southeast side
of the community on city-owned property, and Headwaters took the lead in managing the drilling contract effort and the day-to-day supervision of that site. And the location was based off of really years of research that's been conducted by local volunteer geologists. And we have some of those folks today here in the audience, and I'd like to introduce some of them. First off, Mr. Childs, Board President of Headwaters, and Mr. Bryant Williams, and Digger Gray, and Bobby Joyner. Did I miss anybody else? Okay, very good. Well, again, years of research by these folks, volunteering their time, multiple days out of the week, every weekday, week in and week out, to provide their expertise to the community and to the city, and really honing in on what their thoughts were on where we could be successful in drilling this. And fortunately, they knocked it out of the park because we ended up with a very successful well that is now capable of producing over 700 gallons of fresh groundwater per minute. And we're going to talk a little bit more about putting that well into production, and the first step in that being the engineering contract tonight, and then also Headwaters continuing to monitor that well into the future. So this gives you just a little bit of an idea of the location of the well. You can see kind of the large roadway there is Loop 534, and then Legion Drive, which kind of intersects that area, and it's located on city property, kind of right in that intersection. I'm gonna go ahead and ask for Public Works Director Stuart Barron to come up and just brief you a little bit, very briefly, on some of the drilling efforts, because I think it's pretty interesting. I've got a good video for you too.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'd like to tip my hat to the geologists as well. It's been a 5-year effort for these guys. This is not the only well they've been working on, but an organized effort for 5 years, and no telling how much longer or how much time before that. So thank you for your effort in that, and we are reaping your benefits. So thank you, sirs. This is kind of some pictures of what was happening out there. This is the equipment that was delivered on site. We have the casing there, and that's a cement truck on the top left-hand side. And then also the packing stuff. So as they brought the equipment on site, we started to do the drilling. This is actually a video. I don't know if you can see it very well up there, but anybody wants a private showing, we have some really good footage of them drilling the well. You can see the water bubbling out of the hole, and then also on the bottom right-hand side, it blowing down through there. So a lot of interesting things happened while they were drilling the well. The main reason for it was the exploratory part of this. Are we really going to have water in the Ellenberger aquifer? Right now, most of our wells are finished in the lower Trinity, with the Ellenberger being right under that. Some of our wells do extend just the very top of the Ellenberger. It was thought that there's no water there, so they weren't going to drill into them very far. They just left a little rat hole. So with these guys' help, we decided we'd drill down and see what was underneath that. Fethergill Wilson was the geologist on site for the drilling effort. This is a picture of one of his logs there that shows a little bit of what was downhole. He did the hole all the way down to 1,500 feet. This is a picture of the Schlumberger log that was run. They did a whole suite of logs all the way down to 1,500 feet to figure out where the water was, what the formation looked like, how tight it was, what the porosity was, and then gave all that back to the geologists to let them read it and interpret that. So here's what the well looks like at the end of the day. The crosshatch part up there is about 615 feet deep. That was the casing pipe. They put that drilled through all of the aquifers that are kind of known water sources around here in Kerrville, and then they sealed them off down to 615 feet. They re-entered the hole after that, drilled down, drilled the next about 100 feet, they went down to 710, and there was a bunch of water coming in, and there was a bunch of gravel coming in. They couldn't keep it out, so they cemented it off to hold that formation back so they could continue to drill. When they cemented it off, there was no more water coming in, or very little effectively, and they drilled all the way down to 1,500 feet. At 1,500 feet, that was their total depth. They decided there's no water down below 700 feet, or not a significant volume of water, and they concreted that lower section of the well off, and then came up and treated the pay area between 615 and 710 feet deep, and that is where we were getting our water from in the top part of the Ellenberger. So it produced 793 gallons a minute on an average of a 36-hour pump test. So very good well. Turns out to be about the third highest producing well in the city. So we were very desirable to finish it out and get it into production for us. Here's some of those logs if you're interested. You've heard a lot of these names. This is another geologist that was actually out there, did the pump test for us. He also logged all the different formations along the way. You can see the Ellenberger is highlighted there. Not all of the Ellenberger had water in it. That's a good note. I can't quite see that far on that screen. I think the Ellenberger went down to about 1,100 feet. And as I said earlier, we only did the first 700 feet. So there was some dry parts of the Ellenberger that we did not tap or utilize. So with that.
So again, as Mr. Barron mentioned earlier, it's a very productive well, third most productive well in the city's water production system, producing over 793 gallons per minute over that 36-hour pump test. Again, this was a key implementation item in the long-range water supply plan that you recently adopted. And this was one of the four top strategies was a local Ellenberger well, and we're very fortunate that this exploratory well was productive and it is very reasonably able to be added and bolted on to the city's water supply going into the future. Again, this is showing identified within the long-range water supply plan. This was one of your first and key implementation items for 2020. And on the graphic on the right, you can see it's actually 3 decades worth of water demand needs that were identified within that long-range water supply plan. And that area in green essentially is the water supply that we are now bolting on with this locally productive well. And so, as you can see, it really helps the city basically meet the future projected water demands for the next 2 decades. Next steps and timelines, per the interlocal agreement that you all authorized, we will be seeking to reimburse Headwaters for their drilling effort fully. And then you do have, as an action item tonight for you, the Hewitt Engineering Professional Services Agreement. That will be for the design of the well site, which includes the pump house, pipeline connection, the road, fence, all the basic infrastructure that we'll need to connect it to the city's existing distribution system right there at Loop 534. Should you desire to do so, we will move forward on that engineering contract. We intend to have the design done fall of 2020, and then we'll take it out to bid, and we hope for good bids, and we can begin construction as early as 2021 with full connection anticipated potentially as early as spring 2021 before we go into summer months. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Yeah, is the intent tonight are we doing both the reimbursing Headwaters and agreeing to the Hewitt contract?
Yeah, you won't need to take any action in regards to the interlocal agreement because that's already been authorized by you all. So per the terms of the agreement and the production of the well, we'll be fully reimbursing Headwaters. So you won't need to take any action on that item tonight. Okay. The recommended action is simply to authorize the city manager to finalize and execute that professional services agreement with Hewitt Engineering.
All right, okay. I just want to say, these guys that worked on this are real heroes of mine. They took their professional skills, education, experience, and worked on, finding well site that would produce. And I think it's, let me say this. This is another example where you've got a group of citizens that take on something and say, we're going to get this done. We were at the Arcadia last night, Arcadia Theater, and that's a case of a group of citizens said, we're going to make this happen. And I applaud that. So,
I think we should applaud. I think we should.
Yeah.
And I want to say also that, Brant Williams, Digger, Graves, and Bobby Joins, my hat is off to you guys. The citizens of Kerrville probably will never completely understand the work that you guys put into this. And I'm just so thankful that y'all had the giving heart and the professionalism and the skills to pull this off. This is a great gift to the city of Kerrville.
It's great.
Thank you.
Hey, don't say any more. They're going to expect to be paid. Yeah. All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. We need a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the professional services agreement with Hewitt Engineers for the completion of the groundwater well on the Ellenberger Aquifer.
I'll second that.
Okay. All right. All in favor? Do we have a speaker? Excuse me.
No, sir.
Okay. All in favor? They've been known by the raised hand. Okay.
Thank
All
you,
right.
Stuart.
Now, the 6C, please.
Killdeer Mountain Manufacturing Business Development Project to include the following agreements: Economic Development Grant and Real Estate Purchase Agreement, Economic Development Incentive Grant Agreement with EIC for Killdeer Mountain Manufacturing, Economic Development Incentive Agreement between the City of Kerrville, Texas and Killdeer Mountain Manufacturing. And we also have Ms. Hedger and Gil Salinas on Zoom, the line.
Okay. All right. Okay.
So-
Council?
So just by way of explanation, as you all know, EIC took action, same action that we're asking you all to take. They took that last night. This would be the final action on all of these agreements. And then this is, the action that's required is the motion that's in front of you. These agreements have already been approved per your prior action because they're substantially the same as the agreements that you saw last time. But there is some paperwork that needs to be done in terms of the closing and so forth that we still need your authorization for, and we'll capture that in the minutes and be able to use that at closing. So Mike has prepared the motion that's in front of you, and so that's all we're asking for tonight.
Okay. All right. Ms. Hedger, let's hear from you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just grateful for the opportunity to address the council. I'm very thankful for the efforts and support that you've provided, along with the support that we've had from Mark and Gil Salinas. And, we look forward to good things. It's been a very challenging year. Aerospace has been heavily hit, but yet we have identified a number of good opportunities, and many of them have remained in the midst of a tough year. But we're just very excited, thankful, and look forward to this growth opportunity for our company, community, in both states, Texas as well as North Dakota.
All right, good. Thank you.
Kristen.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Kristen.
Kristen.
Okay, any word on on this matter?
Do we have Gil to hear from?
Do
Gil
I?
Salinas.
We have anyone else?
We do have Gil Salinas on the line. Ms. Franchina, did Gil need to go ahead and speak, or was he on the telephone line for support?
I think I'm here.
Okay.
All right. No, just quickly, on behalf of the KDC.
Whoops.
That was really quick.
Technology is great.
We lost you, Gil.
Hello?
There you are.
Okay. So, no, on behalf of the KDC, and again, the field of economic development and the residents of Kerrville, we're definitely grateful. And what's happening today is, yes, we are fostering the entry and accommodating the needs of a very well-respected and a major company into our community. But we're also helping now provide an opportunity, and that's what that is, an opportunity for 400 families at having a good living wage. And that's at the root of it all, that's economic development. So again, thank you.
All right,
Thank you, Gil.
Thank you. All right, you want to make the motion?
I would be very proud to make the motion to authorize the city manager to finalize and execute the agreements and take any and all action with respect to the KMM project.
I'll second that.
All right, we got a motion and a second. All in favor, please raise your right hand. All right, good, thank you. Yeah, Ray is right.
It's a good night.
True. Yeah. I want to say a word of appreciation again to Mark McDaniel, city manager. He has worked so hard to make this happen, and I really appreciate that. And Gil Salinas, we heard from, has played a vital role from KDC. So it's good to be where we are.
Mayor, I'd like to say that one thing I've really learned through the process is that we're going to be welcoming a very fine corporate citizen and a great family. And so this is a really terrific thing for Kerrville in many ways, not just economic, but just the culture that they bring and complement, and it'll be great for Kerrville.
Yeah, good. Okay, 6D.
Briefing and possible action as to the city's ongoing preparedness in response to COVID-19 coronavirus.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. I have another brief presentation for you tonight on COVID-19, and I'll start with our case count as of today. We're now at 611 confirmed cases in Kerr County. That's a significant increase from the last time I reported to you. I'll explain that number to you in just a minute here. But the good thing about it is we only have 11 active cases. The death count is at 10, and there's one individual hospitalized at this time. There was COVID testing conducted at the Youth Event Center on September 16th. 57 tests conducted, and those results are still pending. So as soon as I get them in, I'm sure we'll have an opportunity to report to them at the next council meeting. Last time I reported to you, I mentioned to you that September the 21st was a key date. It was a key date because it's the actual 14-day period after Labor Day. You may recall we saw a significant increase or spike in Kerr County and actually statewide in COVID cases after the Memorial Day holiday. The good thing is that we've had an increase in our cases, but nothing anywhere close to the spike we saw after the Memorial Day. So we're at 11 cases as of today. July 3rd, Governor's Order GA-29 was implemented, which basically required mandatory masks statewide in the state of Texas. There was a provision in it for counties with 20 or fewer cases. We didn't have 20 or fewer at that particular time, but as of August 14th, Kerr County has met the criteria and has been below that 20 case threshold. As a result of it, an exemption was requested and granted on September the 17th, and that exemption will be in effect. It will only become invalid if Kerr County exceeds 20 active cases again, and at that time, if that happens, we will have to have a period of 30 days with 0 cases before we can request an exemption again. There's quite a bit of confusion out there, again, as a result of some of the things the state is doing regarding our active case count. Exactly what is it? On yesterday, we were notified that they were adding 144 recovered cases to the total Kerr County case count. That increase was caused by a reconciliation of the DSHS records. All the recovered cases were primarily from June. The delay was caused by issues with DSHS electronic reporting system. That glitch caused recovered cases to jump from 446 to 590 cases. The good thing about it is that those 144 individuals were identified back in June, notified, went through the 14-day quarantine process, recovered. So the glitch didn't get the information in the state system to us, but those are recovered COVID patients. Always close with a reminder of social distance, good hygiene, all of that good stuff. But I think I'd like to close tonight with just a thank you to the community. Even though the mask mandate has been lifted, it appears that when I'm out in the community, our citizens, those that I'm seeing, are still practicing all the CDC recommendations. Particularly, there's still quite a few people wearing masks, so I want to thank the community for that. And with that, I'll answer any questions you might have for me on COVID-19.
Chief, I've got one question. I'm getting a lot of questions about positivity, and apparently there's some different interpretations or understandings of it. Basically, how would you explain how you figure the positivity rate?
The way the positivity rate is calculated, that's one of the thresholds that could affect the mask mandate that we're under in Kerr County. But basically, the way the positivity rate is calculated, you look over the course of a 7-day period. We typically track it from Monday morning until midnight on Sunday night, the number of tests that were conducted in that period. From that, the number of tests conducted, the number of positive, you calculate the positivity rate from that. And if it exceeds 12%, that's when it's considered to be a problem for our community.
12%?
12%.
Okay. All right, thanks. Anybody else?
Can I make?
Okay.
Yes,
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Again.
Thank you.
Can I make a comment about something that I experienced with the COVID and my children, Mayor?
Sure.
Okay. Just since going back to school, I just wanted to, that was our first family. Both of my children have now been tested for COVID-19, I guess is what I want to say. And the first was because my son at BT Wilson had 100.2 temperature at school. And so I came and picked him up, and on the way home, I realized how afraid he was of having COVID-19, and I didn't realize there was so much anxiety going on. The reason I share this is because I called Peterson Urgent Care. They got us in through their drive-through in 15 minutes. And when we went in at 1 o'clock, and by 6 o'clock that evening, we had results that he was negative. My younger son then the following week tested positive for strep, and that took over 48 hours, which was not typical for his recovery, and he was continuing to not feel well. Did the same thing just for peace of mind and had the results within 24 hours. I just want to give them a shout out because, you know, the availability and the speed of testing is so important, and it was so important to our family. I think it's so important to the health of the community that you have the opportunity to be tested if you have symptoms and to know that you'll get results quickly and timely. And so I just felt the need to say thank you, and I'm proud of what Peterson did and how they're handling the cases and the testing.
That's good to know.
Great. All right, thank you.
I'm glad it was negative.
Me too.
Yeah.
For a lot of reasons.
All right, 6E, Ms. McLennan.
Review of the declaration of local state of disaster due to a public health emergency, March 20th, 2020.
Okay, there's no staff presentation or recommendation. Anything we need to address? Okay. All right. We don't have any speakers to that, do we?
No, sir.
Okay. All right, we'll move on. Information discussion, Ms. Dozier.
Financial update for the month ended August 31st, 2020.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We're almost to the end of a long agenda. Y'all have gotten a lot done, so congratulations. This will be pretty quick. I just wanted to hit some highlights for finances for the month ended August 31st. Okay. I'm going to start with the general fund. On the general fund, year-to-date through August, we had $26.2 million in revenues compared to $22.9 million in expenditures. Overall, I wanted to point out that revenues have been down due to the pandemic, but they are better than we anticipated they would be a few months ago. And on the expenditure side, we've enacted budget cuts. We also have applied for some CARES Act funding that we're hopeful that we will receive. And both of those things will result in lower than budgeted expenditures for the year. Now, I wanted to spend just a minute talking about sales tax. Sales tax has been kind of our most surprising result during the pandemic. We all expected that sales tax would take a big hit and that we'd see significant decreases as businesses were closed and unemployment was high, but that has not materialized. So for the month of August in particular, and you'll remember that there's a 2-month lag here. So the month of August is when we receive sales tax for sales that actually occurred during June. The month of August, 10.7% higher than August 2019, and almost 5% higher than our original budget. We saw increases primarily in the retail category, which is a very good sign for us because that's definitely the largest category that we receive sales tax from. We saw increases in home improvement stores, big box stores, news stores, online sales, just across the board. Also, I was very happy to see in the month of August that for the first time since the pandemic began, we actually saw a year-over-year increase in the food services category. It wasn't very large, like 3%, but still up a little bit. So that was very hopeful to see. And then it continues on. So kind of a sneak peek for September. We've already received the sales tax in September, and in September up 11.57% compared to the previous year. So once again, we're seeing increases. And once again, those increases are driven by retail across the board, all types. We also saw some increases in manufacturing in August as well, in September as well. This next slide shows you just these particular COVID months starting in May, which would represent sales that actually took place in March. The bar on the left is our budget, and the bar on the right is the actual. And looking at June through September, our actual has exceeded budget in every one of those months. And who would have ever thought? But it's definitely a good news story for us. And also a real testament to our regional retail presence. We are really seeing strong numbers coming out of stores that we know are drawing from a large retail area, especially to the west of here. And then also our online sales, certainly significant increases there too. So it looks like we're on track to, this is crazy to say, to exceed the revenue budget for the year for sales tax. So we have to do some year-end adjustments for financial reporting purposes, but it looks like, around $100,000 better than budget when we were looking at, 800,000 plus worse than budget. Of course, we didn't know what to expect and we didn't want to be too aggressive. But anyway, I never would have thought it would be better than what we originally budgeted.
You're sure you're not making money back there somewhere?
No printing of the money, nothing like that's involved. But it's certainly good news for the businesses in Kerrville, for sure. But I do also want to highlight that there are some impacts to COVID. So we did not have a negative impact on the sales tax side, but there are some other revenue streams that have been impacted. Most notably EMS revenue. It looks like we're going to be short almost $600,000 for the year compared to where we budgeted EMS revenue. Call volume is now starting to return to normal levels, but still down, double digits, 14.3% on a year-to-date basis, especially in that non-emergency transports category. The latest numbers I received were that those were down 30% on a year-to-date basis compared to the prior year. So significant and kind of unexpected impacts from the pandemic there.
Could I ask you a question about that? What
Yes,
do you
ma'am.
think that do you think we had an excessive use of emergency transport? Or, I mean, how do you just say, I'm not going to use it today if you're having a heart attack or?
Yeah, Chief Smith might be a better one to address that, but certainly the stories that I read in the news stated that, you know, on one hand, sometimes people didn't get the treatment that they may have needed because of fear of either overwhelming the hospital or, you know, coming in contact with COVID by going to the hospital. And then also just the fact that people were at home more probably led to fewer accidents and falls or car accidents, that kind of thing as well.
Okay, that's good. I was just curious.
Chief, you want to address that?
I don't really need to. Amy took care of it. She's absolutely correct. When we were looking at this with the hospital, you know, when COVID hit, people stayed at home and they didn't get out. They didn't use medical services, hospital services. Everything was down. So Amy really didn't need me. She just wanted me to get a little exercise tonight.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
All right. Also wanted to mention that the ambulance supplement payment, this is something we talk about during budget times. It's a once-a-year payment that we get from the state, and it reimburses us for some Medicaid costs that are not paid for just through normal means. And we were hoping for about $400,000. It's coming in at $198,000. It's one of those payments each year that is subject to state funding and subject to how much other ambulance companies turn in and ask for, and then they divvy it out across the state. We had a heads up a few months ago that it looked like the state funding was not going to come through at the level anticipated. So that's part of the shortfall in EMS revenue as well. Next up, recreation revenue. So recreation revenue, we know we had some closures at Kerrville Shriner Park and delayed start to the swim season, that kind of thing. So it does look like we'll still be a little bit short for the year on recreation revenue, but not too bad, like maybe $25,000 or $30,000 less than what we'd originally thought. And the month of August is up significantly. So up almost 40% compared to August of 2019. And this is mostly revenue from Kerrville Shriner Park is where most of our recreation revenue comes from. We specifically saw increases in day passes, RV site revenue, mini cabin revenue. We've talked about that RV market before. The RV market's really coming on strong, and we're benefiting from that in Kerrville. We've seen positive revenue impacts from increased social media and marketing. Our Parks Department has done a great job on social media this summer. Plus this COVID-related RV industry gains, we're seeing impacts there as well. Then lastly, municipal court. So municipal court's another place where we're expecting a pretty significant shortfall, about $325,000 short of what we had budgeted revenues to be, down compared to August of 2019. And, you know, certainly they're doing a lot of things to look at revenues and look at ways to increase efficiencies, that kind of thing. But the actual court was closed for a period of time, so that significantly impacted us, and that's a COVID-related impact. Let's see. Okay, moving on to general fund expenditures. As I stated before, it looks like we're going to come in significantly less than budget because of those cuts that we implemented in the spring. We have vacancies that we didn't fill, parks, police, engineering, IT. We had some temporary executive salary reductions, reduced paving expense, reduced travel and training, supplies, equipment. Everyone really has pitched in when we thought that we'd have a very significant shortfall. Moving on to the water fund, looking at year-to-date through August, $11.6 million in revenues and $11.3 million in expenditures. It looks like we are going to come in a little bit under budget for the year on our revenues, specifically on our water revenue. But that revenue shortfall is going to be more than offset by decreased expenditures due to primarily savings in supplies and maintenance. And I will be bringing back a year-end budget amendment to y'all in the next couple of months. This will be on all funds. The general fund will have this as well, but on the water fund especially, if we're left with a little bit of excess at the end of the year, we'll ask if council will approve transferring that money to the asset replacement fund so that we can cash fund some large purchases, specifically in this case, the VACCON purchase that we spoke about during the budget season. And then I want to hit just a couple of highlights on the other funds. I'm going to move to this bullet point list here on the Development Services Fund. We just continue to see strong numbers there. Revenues are better than budget due to these large projects we've been talking about for a while now. HEB, KISD, The Landing, Arcadia, Starbucks, etc. Golf Fund, I have some good news there. Year-to-date revenue is now higher than the same year-to-date revenue in 2019. They're seeing increased rounds there. They've also increased their rates some this year compared to last year. They've also seen some increases in tournament revenue this year compared to last year. And golf is another industry that's having the same kind of RV-like trend where people are seeing golf as a safe way to recreate during the pandemic, outside, small groups, socially distanced, that kind of thing. And then lastly, the Hotel Occupancy Fund. So a little bit of good news there. I mean, we still look like we're going to be short for the year there, and, pretty significantly, maybe close to $300,000 less than the revenue that we had budgeted for the year, but the month of August was only down 1.2% compared to August of 2019. And we're seeing the same kinds of trends in the Hotel Occupancy Tax Fund, where things are changing a little bit in how people choose to vacation. And so we're seeing increases at short-term rental properties, properties with standalone structures or cabins, mini home kind of properties. So people still want to get out, but they want a little bit more space and separation. And then the last thing I wanted to highlight is our debt refunding update. So as you have probably already seen, our debt rating for the city has been reaffirmed at a AA rating. So a AA rating to our refunding bonds and affirmed a AA rating on our existing debt. Standard & Poor's had some nice things to say about the city. You can see the quotes there, and you may have seen the press release about it as well. Just a couple of things to note. So a AA rating means that we differ only from the highest rated obligations, which would be the AAA, to a very small degree. The obligator's capacity to meet its financial commitments on the obligation is very strong. So this is Standard & Poor's definition of us. One of their lines there, Kerrville's debt and contingent liability profile is strong. I wanted to just elaborate on that a little bit. During our discussions with Standard & Poor's and in the write-up that they gave us, they noted a couple of things. Our debt that is property tax supported is a small percentage. Most of our debt, over 80%, is considered self-supporting. So that means paid by water fund revenues or sales tax revenues rather than by property tax debt or by property tax. They also specifically mentioned that a large portion of our debt is going to be repaid in the next 10 years, and so that leads to a strong position. And then this contingent liability word there, the largest contingent liability that most cities have that relates to pension plans. And our pension plan is well funded at 87% funded. So we're in a strong position there as well. And just a brief update on that debt refunding. Pricing actually happened today. Have some preliminary numbers that are better than what was presented to council when council approved us moving forward. Looks like it's going to be a little over $800,000 in savings over the remaining life of the debt. So we're set to close on October 15th, and we'll have Ann Berger-Intrican from Hilltop Securities here at your next council meeting to give you all the details on the final numbers. And that's all I have. Any questions?
No, thank you.
Good news.
Yeah,
Most
It
of
is,
it.
yes.
Thank you.
It is
coming,
good news.
that kind of news, that's great.
Right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. We have anybody signed up to speak?
No, sir.
Okay. All right. Items for future agendas?
I had one. Could we possibly get an HEB update at our next meeting? Maybe get an HEB representative to come talk about opening and pumps and,
Yeah, and when Jefferson Street's gonna open?
right. I'm sure they.
So we'll have a representative from HEB at your next meeting.
Okay, all right, good, okay. All right, in regard to board appointments,
Mr. Mayor, could I recommend that we go into executive session under 551.074?
okay?
And I
We'll do
would second that.
executive session, all right? Okay, go up there.
Sign.
Okay.
Need to take a vote on that?
Oh, all in favor?
Do what?
She seconded it, and then we need to
Okay.
all approve.
All in favor? Okay, there we go. Okay. We adjourn this part of the council, go into executive session, come back. There may or may not be a report.
Are we going into executive session under 074? I didn't hear what, I couldn't hear.
551.074.
Okay, 074, okay.
Okay. We took no action in the executive session, and we are adjourned.
So now you can say, it really was a good night.